Welcome back to I Am Angus, brought to you by the American Angus Association and the Igenity Profile for Angus, providing Angus breeders with comprehensive genomic results for multiple economically important traits.
I like the story that we tell here. Eisenhower is a president that people can admire. He was a good president as far as keeping us safe in the 1950s during the height of the Cold War. He moved forward on civil rights, which was certainly the major domestic issue of his administration. He also had good examples of good management style and leadership during World War II, with his role as the first Supreme Allied Commander for the European Theater of Operations. Well, Eisenhower was looking for a retirement home when he and Mamie were at Columbia University in 1950. They had friends in the area who encouraged them to come to Gettysburg, and of course Eisenhower had actually lived here in 1918 when he had his first independent command at Camp Colt on the Gettysburg battlefield, and that was a tank training center, and Eisenhower had about 10,000 men under his command. And he came to this particular farm and noticed that it really needed help. The soil was worn out, there was a lot of erosion, it had not received proper soil conservation efforts, and he looked at that as a challenge. And he was really into soil conservation because in the 1930s he had been stationed in Washington, D.C., and his brother Milton was at the Department of Agriculture. And of course, those were the Dust Bowl years, and during that time the two of them would get together and they would just have long talks about how if soil was properly conserved, especially the topsoil, and properly fortified with organic matter and other chemicals that it needed, that the American farmer could be so productive that they could actually feed the world. When he bought the farm, he had a dairy herd here and about 600 chickens for egg-laying operation, and fairly soon he decided he wanted to get out of the dairy and egg operation, and they were sold off, and he decided to raise Angus cattle. Going to see the show barn where the Angus cattle were groomed and all the ribbons were displayed that they had won was kind of a mandatory part of the tour of the farm. As John Eisenhower, Eisenhower's son, said, you went to see the farm and the cattle whether you liked cattle or not, because Eisenhower liked them and he wanted to show them all off to his guests, whether you were a friend or a family member, or whether you were a visiting world leader. And many, many world leaders went to see the cattle at the show barn. People like Nikita Khrushchev, Charles de Gaulle, Winston Churchill, Adenauer of West Germany, Nehru of India. They and many others were guests here. And after you saw the cattle barns, then Eisenhower would usually bring you back to his home and you'd have a chance to sit and talk informally with him on the sun porch and get to know each other one-on-one. When you go through his home, you would expect you might see his military decorations and things of that nature, and they're not on display. And even though that was his life's work and certainly something he was extremely proud of, when people came here, he wanted to show them about the cattle and show off all the ribbons and banners that they had won. Well, I think it's really important that we can talk about this aspect of Eisenhower's life and the aspect, his interest in Angus cattle and cattle breeding. Not only does it make him a multifaceted person when people can learn about all of these different things, it also helps to perpetuate the importance of agriculture in our society. We have so many school groups that come here and visitors that come who live in city, urban environments or even suburban environments who are not at all familiar with agriculture. So any chance we have to let them know a little bit about farming and cattle is probably a good educational endeavor and benefits all agriculture in the country and our country as a whole.
Did you know you can capture the value of Angus sired calves through Angus Source, the industry's leading age and source verification program? Data from Superior Livestock Auction shows calves enrolled in Angus Source fetch $2.65 per hundredweight, or about $16 per head, more than non-verified calves last summer. Angus Source calves also brought $1.08 more per hundredweight than other aged and source verified calves. And if Angus Source doesn't fit your herd, Gateway will, a second-tier source and age verification program. Gateway has no genetic requirements and gives cattlemen access to an online listing site and marketing support. Last year, the American Angus Association and Igenity made history by providing the industry's first ever genomic-enhanced EPDs. The technology promises to have a profound impact on genetic prediction and advancement.
Well, we actually started a collaboration with Igenity about 2 years ago now in trying to determine a good way to incorporate the use of DNA molecular data for various traits into our genetic evaluation procedures. It really affords producers to increase the amount of information at a much younger age on animals that can go into these selection tools. For example, calves shortly after birth, we don't have to wait now till weaning or even yearling time to collect data that can influence their EPDs. That can be done shortly after birth, and that data immediately goes into the genetic evaluation procedures. Likewise, producers that may be challenged to get large enough contemporary groups for traditional phenotypic data, you really have the advantage of just being able to use the DNA information off of single animal to still provide useful data for that animal's genetic predictions.
I think the most common misconception that I hear from breeders is they think that they have to have a veterinary come obtain the samples, and that's not necessary. Most of these samples, they can obtain them themselves. There are 4 different types of samples that you can submit. The preferable sample is blood on a blood card. You also can submit a straw of semen, a tissue tag, or a tail hair sample. So if you're wanting to send in a sample that can be archived, you would either need to use an FTA card, which is a blood card, or a tail hair sample. If they're doing several animals at one time, just ensure that they're marking and tagging the samples correctly, making sure on the blood samples that they provide an adequate amount of blood, that they don't undersaturate, but yet that they don't oversaturate the sample as well.
The information that you get back from these profile tests, results on the carcass traits go into the carcass EPDs and the carcass evaluation to produce genomic enhanced EPDs for carcass traits. You also get the profile scores back on the other 10 traits that are included in the Igenity profile. We will over time incorporate those other tests into EPDs or selection tools utilizing the genomic data as well. We're excited about the future of genetic evaluation and further collaboration with Igenity and the American Angus Association that's going to give even more power to the beef cattle producer to produce in a profitable manner cattle that are going to really impact the industry and provide the consumer with a desirable product all over the world.
Did you know the Angus Foundation is one of the most active nonprofit organizations in the cattle business? The foundation provides scholarships, research funding, and educational workshops across the country. So if you're concerned about the future of agriculture, consider investing in the Angus Foundation and its vision of value. Campaign for Angus. Coming up next, they came from Italy in 1958. Now their retail business is one of New York City's finest.